What's up, YouTubers and plant lovers? It's Justin coming to you from the Big Blue Nation once again. And today I was going to talk to you about a fairly tropical plant. Well, I guess that's really all it really would be, is a tropical plant. But this is a hibiscus. I know this is a really popular plant, especially in the spring and summertime. And particularly, it's mostly for its bloom. These plants have beautiful flowers, beautiful foliage, and the duration of the bloom time is exceedingly long nowadays in modern hibiscus. Now, starting off, there are about 8 different species, or not really species, but 8 different kind of ancestral plants for the modern hibiscus. Some of them are really beautiful flowers that last a little bit of a long time, but most of them are fairly unique, kind of specialized, different kind of flowers that really are kind of small and don't really last a whole long time. Now, these 8 ancestral plants kind of span the globe anywhere that's kind of a tropical area, kind of around the equator. These plants come from India and China, Hawaii, Mauritius, any kind of tropical place like that. They can still be found today. Now, all the hibiscus have the same kind of requirements in need of like care. I believe the first one we're going to go ahead and start off with is light. A lot of people think that hibiscus need a lot of light, anywhere from about 6 to 8 hours of sunlight a day, and direct sunlight at that. But that's just really not the case. Several studies have been given to where they just really only need to be about anywhere from about 2 to 3, maybe even 4 hours of direct sunlight a day. A lot of people have found that you can even kind of place them in like a southern facing window, and as long as they receive about 2 to 3, maybe even 4 hours of direct sunlight a day, will be adequate for a hibiscus to go ahead and flower too. But once you get down to about 2 to maybe even 1 hour direct sunlight, your plant isn't really going to get what it needs, therefore it won't produce prolific blooms, and you'll have pretty much a green, kind of dark green kind of color for your bush. Well, that's fine for a house plant, but if you're wanting to be a show-stopping plant with beautiful blooms, you're going to want to give it about 3, a little bit more sunlight and direct sunlight at that. Once you get over about 4 to 6 and over, you can kind of start burning your leaves. These plants can take some direct sunlight, but not a whole lot. And once you start to increase the amount of sunlight per plant, you're going to want to increase the amount of water or humidity that your plant is getting as well. Especially in the hotter parts of the day and the harder parts of the year, your plant is going to need more water per more heat and light that you're getting your plant. Now, water is a very, very important part for hibiscus. These plants are water-loving plants. You got to remember, they come from the tropics, to where it's very humid and very wet year-round. So hibiscus love water, and you can kind of tell with mine here, the leaves are pretty dark. I just planted this about a day or 2 ago. It's in a well-lit, well-ventilated area, and it does get adequate water for this plant. But other than that, oftentimes I'm going to have to go in and step in and give this plant water at least once a day, especially in the heat of the summer. These plants will need a lot of water, so don't forget that. You're going to want to water your plant with regular rainwater, but if you live in an area like I do that has hard water, you're going to want to kind of step in and give it some distilled water, or else you can hurt your plant and kind of burn it out. If you start to see brown edges around the leaves, along the edges, you probably do have hard water, and you're going to want to go ahead and kind of give it some regular distilled water to make sure that you can kind of counteract the brownness of the edges of the leaves. Once you do start to see brown edges, there's really nothing else you can kind of do except make sure you're giving your plant distilled water. That will flush any of these nutrients or chemicals or anything else that's been deposited in your leaves. So make sure you're using filtered water, but a lot of filters don't take out the chemicals like chlorine and fluoride that can do damage to a plant over an extended period of time. So make sure that you're using distilled water. Distilling the water will remove all that kind of other chemicals and stuff from your plant. If you're wanting to use a filtered water. The only filtered water that I know that's a good for your plant is the zero water. That will remove the chemicals and other stuff that's left in by other filters. Pure won't do it, Dasani won't do it, or any of the other kind of filters that are out there. So make sure you're using distilled water for your plants, or else you will get a kind of a brown leaves and not as many blooms on your plant either. Feeding is a very, very, very tricky situation for your hibiscus. More often than not, on the back of your fertilizer, you'll have 3 numbers. Maybe a 15, 15, 15. That symbolizes the NPK, the nitrogen, your phosphorus, and your potassium. Nitrogen is very important for all plants and all cells living, whether you're human, dog, or plants. That number there is going to be very important. But the most important for all of your hibiscus needs is going to be your potassium. Potassium is going to help with the chlorophyll and photosynthesis. And it's also going to help regulate water for your hibiscus as well. Potassium will help make sure that your plant will hold on to the water and keep the cells kind of turgid to keep your plant upright and holding on to all the water that it needs. So whenever you dehydrate your plant, you'll also lose a lot of potassium in there as well. And then once it's very hydrated, there won't be any water in there whatsoever, and your plant will start to wilt. So make sure that on your NPK, that your last number of your potassium, that's going to be the highest number on there for your hibiscus. Other plants might need higher levels of phosphorus, but in a hibiscus, that's the least amount that your plant is going to need is phosphorus. So make sure that you may have kind of a moderate level of nitrogen, a very low level of phosphorus, and a very high level of potassium. Now, whenever you're planting the plant as well, like I had to put soil in this big pot for this plant, I used something that wasn't very high in the phosphorus. So make sure that when you do buy your topsoil or your garden soil or anything like that, you check the numbers on there too. Because if there's adequate fertilizer in there and then you put more fertilizer on top of that, you're just going to burn your plant out. Now, I don't know if you can see from the back, but I've got a bunch of soil in here and then mulch on top of it as well. Now that's just because this mulch will help kind of insulate the plant also. They're supposed to call for another couple of nights that are going to be around 50 degrees. Hibiscus are from the tropical areas and they don't like a whole lot of cold weather. So the mulch will insulate the soil and the roots and keep them well protected from any kind of cold weather, cold snaps that we might have. But also, as it breaks down over time, the mulch will add adequate nutrients to the plant also. So it'll also keep the roots kind of cool and damp during the heat of the day, but it'll also keep it at night. It'll also keep the heat kind of in there and keep the plant warm as well, so it won't freeze. You don't have to use mulch. You can also use cocoa coir, weeds, kind of grass as it's been chopped up. Kind of put it on top, and it'll also help insulate the plant as well. Grass will do the same thing, though it won't be as high in nutrients as the mulch will. People will use rocks to kind of hold it down in place. That can be okay, but you got to worry if you come in with your lawnmower that will hit a rock and kind of send it flying and hurt somebody. Mulch is lighter weight, so it won't weigh the plant down and damage your roots like rocks will. So just be careful if you have rocks in there as well. Another thing I wanted to mention is when you first buy your plant, oftentimes you think it's got adequate soil in there. A lot of times it does not. And oftentimes we'll have cocoa coir, perlite, composted bark, anything else that'll kind of hold your plant in place and keep it sturdy, but it won't add any kind of nutritional benefit to your plant at all. So the plant you might see, it might look pretty good, it'll get adequate water and everything, but that's all it's going to end up doing for your plant. So just make sure that when you buy it, you are going to check it and make sure that there is actual soil down in there. And now it might look like soil, but just be careful, because oftentimes places will use the cheapest form of substrate that they can to keep their plants well taken care of. Now it'll hold them up straight and everything, but it won't actually provide the nutrients that it needs. So once you get your plant, kind of watch it for a couple of days and see how it acts. Once I put this guy in here, I went ahead and added some nutrients in there, some fertilizer. I've got my own that I use for my flowering plants. It is kind of with the hibiscus, but it's lower on the phosphorus side than it is on the potassium, because as I said earlier, it will mess your plant up. And just keep an eye on those numbers, and that'll help you regulate what all you need for your hibiscus. Keep in mind they are a little bit different from your other azaleas, rhododendrons, coreopsis, anything like that that does bloom. A lot of times they'll give them higher nitrogen and phosphorus than they will potassium. Pest is another thing that people struggle with the hibiscus. Oftentimes you'll see powdery mildew and rust that come into play with these plants. I believe rust is caused when it's kind of been wet and damp out and also cold out, kind of a cooler night. You can get rust to settle in on these leaves. Powdery mildew will kind of settle in when it's very warm and humid and damp, and it can actually spread not only through your whole hibiscus but to other plants as well. A good thing to do in that case is to use preventative measures. You'll want to use a good pesticide or a fungicide. Spin, or is it 7 or Spin? They'll make a good pesticide and fungicide on there that will actually take care of your plant. And you can actually spray it down if you suspect you're getting any rust or powdery mildew on there, and it will actually help it to keep it from spreading also. Now, if you live in an area like me, I'm in Kentucky, we have pretty moderate winters, so I can't leave this plant out all year round. This plant will freeze and it will die. These hibiscus do not like temperatures below 50 degrees, so if you know it's going to be below 55, I would advise you to go ahead and take it in. Now, as I was saying, they do come from areas like Fiji and Hawaii. Now, occasionally it does get cold like that down there, so every once in a while it's not going to hurt it. But if you know it's going to be an extended period of time where it's about 55 or lower, I would take the plant inside. So this isn't a heavy pot. Once this plant dies, I will not take care of it. It'll just die, and I'll compost it and go on from there and start over again next year. Unfortunately, I don't live in an area where I can keep it out all year long, so I do have a smaller one that I'd keep in about a 6-inch pot that I will take in and outside and kind of care for it a little bit longer. But this guy is so big that I won't have that ability to be able to care for it like that and bring it in and out. So just keep in mind that these do not like cold weather, so when you're picking your pot, use one that's probably going to be like a plastic, something like that that's not real heavy, so that if you do have to lug it in and out over the years and it gets bigger, you won't strain yourself or hurt yourself from using a big old glass or marble or whatever kind of pot you need. So in recap, the only thing we need to worry about with hibiscus is light, and make sure your plant is getting at least 2 to 3 hours of direct sunlight a day. Even if your plant is inside, as long as it's getting light from a south-facing window, it should be fine. You could probably keep it inside maybe most of the year round. I mean, you'll want to take it outside whenever it gets really nice out for sure, but you can keep it inside by a window to make sure that it will last through the winter time as well. They are a little sensitive whenever it comes to warm and cold drafts, so make sure you don't have it by a heating vent or an air conditioner or a drafty window or door or anything like that, because it will hurt your plant. They are a little sensitive. Water is very important for your hibiscus as well. Make sure that if it's a hot day out, you're going to give your plant water, because these leaves will start to wilt. And if these leaves are already wilting, there's already some damage that's occurring to your plant. It's just damage that you cannot see. So you want to try and catch it before it wilts to keep your damage at a minimum. But obviously you're not going to be able to do that every time, so just kind of pay attention to it and make sure that if you know it's going to be a hot day, that you kind of water it early in the day so that it's able to withstand the high temperatures that are coming. If you can't do that, just whenever you get home, give it some water again. And you're going to want to water it until water comes out the very bottom of the drainage holes on the bottom. That way you know that the roots at the bottom are getting adequate water as well. Roots that aren't getting adequate water all the time will begin to die the longer they go without water. And that will cause damage to your plant over an extended period of time. So make sure that you are watering your plant adequate also. Fertilizer, NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Make sure you have moderate levels of nitrogen, very low levels of phosphorus, and very, very high levels of potassium. Out of all three of them, the potassium is going to be the highest that you need. So make sure that when you go to get that fertilizer, you may have like a 14, a 5, and a 27. That way your hibiscus will be well taken care of when it comes to fertilizing. And don't forget, once you add soil to this, a lot of these soils have at least 6 months of fertilizer in them. So don't plant them with fresh dirt and then go in a day or two and add fertilizer on top of that, because you will burn the plant out. Temperature wise, do not put this guy outside unless you know for sure that the danger of frost has passed, and then at night it won't get below 55 degrees. Well guys, that's really all I know what to say about hibiscus care. Like I said, this is my largest one I have now. I love the solid yellow ones. They are beautiful mixed in with this green and in around my garden. I hope I was able to provide a little bit of an understanding with this tropical plant and let you know that it is possible to take care of it in any kind of part of the northern contiguous United States. Maybe even Alaska, just for a small limited time. So go ahead and leave me a comment. Let me know if you have any questions, any concerns, or anything that I did not address with this plant. And while you're at it, hit the subscribe button or the bell next to it. That way you'll know anytime that I've uploaded a new video. I hope you guys have a good one. Take it easy. And don't forget, always plant prudently, YouTube. Thank you, guys.